Ladies and metalfish, this is your hard-boiled king of draw style, Daddy Janjo, baby. So, in this video, I want to talk about Tournament Pack 1, the very first tournament pack in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's kind of a really weird one, so I just want to jump right into it. So let's go. Alright, so Tournament Pack first season, I'm sorry, it's not Tournament Pack 1. It was released on September 1st, 2002, a month before Magic Rulers. So it wasn't like the same release date as Metal Raiders. It was a bit after, which is why you don't see Mechanical Chaser played in community-driven formats. Now, if Konami ever decides to change things up and make a Critter format Time Wizard event, then we'll have to wait and see, but that's talk for another day. It is and it isn't in a lot of ways more impactful than Tournament Pack 2. In Tournament Pack 2, we got Morphing Jar, which was like the big card of the set, one of the most notable cards in all of like that first era of Yu-Gi-Oh! But we have another very powerful card in Mechanical Chaser. Like, if you're not familiar with old school Yu-Gi-Oh!, it may seem kind of like whatever, 1850, 800, vanilla monster. Even though we had strong low-level monsters like Yugioh and Dark Elf, those had drawbacks to attack, whether it was Dark Elf or 1,000 life points to attack, or Yugioh with the ability that you might half your life points. A lot of people didn't really enjoy playing those for those downsides, especially in an era where you could be running stuff like Solemn Judgment. You could be getting beat down a little bit quicker. And otherwise, the only strong monsters we had low level were two. In terms of vanilla normal monsters, that was Lojin, Mystical Genie of the Lamp with 1800 attack, and the newly released 7-color Fish, also with 1800 attack. So now you have a vanilla monster with, even though it's only 50 more, it's still a lot more. It really changes deck building when you don't have to run all these monsters to kind of crash with each other. Now you just have this one monster that can beat over your opponents. And it was the ultra rare of the set, meaning it was very hard to pull. Because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but in tournament packs, you only get 3 cards, right? And this is assuming you win the packs at your local tournament store. So there was definitely a very low chance you'd pull one of these guys. So then moving on from like Mechanical Chaser, which definitely changed the game in some regards, at least looking back in hindsight. We have Axe Raider, which is a really interesting case for a card. See, Axe Raider only has 1700 attack, and as we just established, 1800 was definitely the popular line at this point. 1700 didn't see people play stuff like Battle Ox and Neo like you did in the May 2002 format, which is kind of a shame because I think Axe Raider is really cool. He's an anime card, of course he is, as a super rare, so it was also a little harder to pull. And it is a shame because if this card was released in an older format, in like the previous main list, like the May list, it would have been a lot better. You would have seen a lot more beatdown decks with just a 1700 because you did have those cards as a staple in the deck. But all of a sudden they released this card just slightly too late. It's a case of just dead on arrival, and it's one of those weird cases of it's not outright terrible, right? Like if you didn't have 1800 attack monsters, you could run Axe Raider at your locals at the time, and it's not a sub 1k mon. It's not like a defaultly really terrible monster like Ray and Temperature. It's so close, but not quite there. I think the first case of like a card that's been used in modern play, that's Quaggar Hercules. It started to see more play when B Troopers were getting really hyped up, I believe, a couple years ago. And it hasn't really seen many reprints. I mean, yeah, I got that reprint because people wanted to play the card. And then again, another super rare, and it's like you weren't going to run an insect deck back then unless you're like a really big Weeble stan and you just did not want to play anything else. It's a bad card, right? It's a fusion, 1900 attack. You can't beat over defenders like Giant Soldier of Stone. But its main purpose in modern play was that you could summon it off of like instant fusion, I believe, or was it ready fusion? It has 6 stars. It's a vanilla. It has a low attack. It can special summon an insect monster, an earth insect, to do whatever you needed from that. So that was kind of its like main purpose, and we see a lot of cards in old school Yu-Gi-Oh format that get a new life even when they didn't have one before, which is really interesting, like we saw with Mushroom Man #2 a couple years back, even Exchange at one point. And Guara Hercules might be the only example from this set I can think of, because most of the other cards from this set were a little bad. I mean, we have White Hole, which I remember hearing about back then, but I didn't ever see the card because, yeah, it was Tournament Pack 1. When am I going to actually see the card? It's a anti-Dark Hole. Now, every deck was running Dark Hole back then, so you could theoretically see this card. So if you had this card and nothing better to put in your deck, which typically was the case, if you had better cards, you would just put them over White Hole. This isn't the best card. It's a very specific counter. And you have one to counter basically a 1-of in a deck. But if you get it off, that is super anime moment, and that's really cool. I thought the idea of the White Hole was really interesting. Maybe we'll get a Gray Hole one day. That'd be fun. My hole. Then you got these equip magic, Elves Light, Steel Shell, Burning Spear, Gust Fan, I believe that's it, which was very reminiscent of the equip spells in Yugi Kaiba format, like Sword of Dark Destruction and Invigoration, the stuff that came in the starter deck Yugi and Kaiba, because they increased by 400 as opposed to the Legend of Blue Eyes equips that equipped by 300. And Metal Raiders included a couple more generic stuff. They're a little bit more gimmicky than just these attribute boosters. And this is another card similar to Axe Raider, like all these cards. It is a shame that it was a little too late on release. I feel like if these cards were released in May 2002, it would have seen way more play, way more variety in decks, just having more light strategies, water strategies, hell, even fire strategies, even though there wasn't really any good fire monsters at that point. Like, imagine Steel Shell in a Umi beatdown deck with Great White. Like, that sounds awesome. This card also hits any drivers in first place, which is really cool, too. It's another one of those things that makes TP1 really weird for me, because it's like, aside from Mech Chaser, so much cards in this could have just been applied to May 2002. And it's a little shame it isn't, because most of the cards kind of suck in it. But we did get one other really interesting thing, I will say, and that is the Fusion Substitute cards. We got, like, all of them. We got Goddess with a Third Eye, Beast King of the Swamps, and Versago the Destroyer. They can substitute for any one fusion monster. So you can use one, and then you can use, like, Lesser Dragon to create a Metal Dragon if you wanted to. Or Goddess with a Third Eye and Summon Skull to make Black Skull Dragon. You can't use two of these like it was in, like, early OCG, but you can make Black Skull Dragon a little bit easier, a little bit less brickier, especially since you can search this stuff out with Sangan and Witch of the Black Forest. And it was just really great to use an early, I don't know, kind of card in the game by this point, but just having this made it a little bit easier if you're super invested in the fusion strategy. So you definitely could see cards like this for a variety of cards in the July 2002 format, with Musician King to auto-trigger Witch of the Black Forest on field. Labyrinth Tank, I've talked about that already. Black Skull Dragon, you can even run, Summon Skull in most decks. A Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. There's a lot of cards you could run in decks that these fusion subs made way more viable, which I think is absolutely amazing for the game to have. We got a couple other bad cards. Blue Medicine. I believe Blue Medicine had a different effect originally. It was like you or your opponent gain 400 life points. There's something weird like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Raimei is another really terrible burn card. And most of them are just like really bad monsters otherwise. You had Giant Flea, which did help slightly. The insect deck, again, if you're playing that a lot. Watt Kid, originally called Oslo Hero #2. Statue of Easter Island, this card actually, so this card was used in, I want to say Adamancipator, if I'm remembering correctly, just as there's a level 4 Earth Rock you could get out from your deck with one of the effects. And you could use a bunch of different cards. Like, it wasn't just this card specifically, but I think people found this card kind of funny to use. and that it was actually, it was usable. Probably wasn't the best target, but you could still use it in these decks. So you saw this card a little bit too in around, was 2020, I want to say, which I think was kind of hilarious. Another neat card here is Winged Dragon Guardian of the Fortress #2. This card was like, this was a card for me back in the day. I saw this card, I'm like, fuck, I wanted it. It looks so cool. Like, it's a red Winged Dragon Guardian of the Fortress. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, Daddy Janjo, what's up with it? Well, Winged Dragon, even though it's a winged beast, it should be called Winged Beast Guardian of the Fortress. Well, that's because its OCG name is Wyvern. It's not actually another Winged Dragon card. We see this with a lot of cards, too, as we kind of mentioned before with Oslo Hero and Oslo Hero #2, because this card was actually supposed to be called Watt Kid. All these recolored cards. I mean, Gods of the Third Eye, that's Witch of the Black Forest. So it's not like we haven't seen this stuff before. This set's already just introducing. And this card's bad otherwise. Like, it's a wind. It's a wind 1200, 1000. Like, it's definitely subpar from the start. It's just, it looks cool. I think the recolors are really cool. Anything that's somewhat anime related, I think, is dope. Like, Shining Friendship, even that's another terrible card. Or Hercules Beetle, another insect card. The Judgment Tan, which I think might be the only Yu-Gi-Oh card that spells judgment like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because Cyber Soldier Dark World, this would eventually get treated as not a cyber card. It's also, I think it's considered a Dark World card too. Not entirely sure. And then Cockroach Knight is probably the most prominent of the effect monsters, where when it's sent to the graveyard, it just returns to the top of the deck. So it's like the original Sinister Serpent. It's like a cockroach, right? That's the whole idea behind its effect, that it never dies. The card definitely seems really interesting. Obviously, like, it's not good when you think about it for more than a minute, but the idea is neat. Just this ongoing resource. If only there was more, like, direct attacking support. Like, if that card could direct attack, I think it would be way more interesting. Like, in addition to its effect, it's just like a lot of bad cards. That's like the sad part about this. Even the effect monsters like Wodan, the Resident of the Forest. Yeah, you can increase your attack for every plant monsters on the field. He's not a plant monster, which is unfortunate. A warrior, like, why not make him a plant? Just give him a 100 by default, but it's only 100. So you're only getting a, what, 400 points increase to this guy? Like, he's not even beating over, like, a Uraby. Like, he's not beating over anything, especially at this point in the game where plant monsters are just basically non-existent. I mean, there's nothing good. The variety is not very strong. I mean, you got Bean Soldier, the original Jerry Beans man, but I mean, what are you gonna do? And just all these other cards, like, I mean, I could go on and talk about all of them, but like, they're all just mostly low attack monsters. And what makes Tournament Pack 1 really unique to me is that, unlike LOB and Metal Raiders and stuff, which were reprints of more later release cards in relation to like the OCG card pool, this one was a lot of older cards. Like, the Tournament Pack series was a ton of older cards, which gives them a definitely an older look to them, and it definitely vibes a little bit differently than the 2002 core sets we got. So I think this was a way for Konami, or Upper Deck, to give us a lot of these stranger cards that they didn't really know how to print otherwise. Like, when are we getting Corroding Shark, or WoW Warrior, or Cyber Soldier of Dark World, right? It really comes off as an interesting experiment that you can go and get these cards. Like, yeah, you may pull a Patrol Robo. You might even use Patrol Robo. Getting Mechanical Chaser or Axe Raider, or even like some of the equipped cards. It was a good power up to decks in an era where you weren't going to buy all your cards out straight up. Like, we see on Pojo local reports, because there wasn't any like major events in the TCG at this point, where it was a lot of just gumbo what good stuff you had in your decks. That's why you saw a lot of Blue Eyes White Dragons, because a lot of cards couldn't really deal with that stuff. And now you can equip an Elf's Light to a Blue Eyes White Dragon, have 3400 attack, and Blue Eyes beats Blue Eyes equipped with all these other like crazy cards. Like, you definitely could see so much crazy stuff in it. Like, it's easy to say, oh, Mechanical Chaser is the only good card, get 3 of these, but back then, it's like, you'd be lucky if you saw 1. Like, I only own 1 copy, and it's a European version at that. So let me know what your favorite TP1 card is and your thoughts on the set as a whole. I think it's very fascinating, and I just really wanted to talk about it. I think this was the best time for me to talk about it. And even though I'm more a proponent of Tournament Pack 2, I think Tournament Pack 1 has such a ton of amazing stuff to offer. So yeah, hopefully you all enjoy this video. Make sure to do all the YouTube engagement stuff. Check out my Patreon, because I got a cool early bird stuff on there, especially for the following week's video. So definitely check that out. And until I see you all next time, have a wonderful day.